All right, man. So let's go over some common themes that I hear from clients, from people who are really on their journey, right? They're dialing things in, they're doing really well, they have goals, they're ambitious, they're like, man, I want to get to this certain body weight, or I want to drop body fat percentage, or I want to improve my health. They have goals, they have ambitions, and they're serious. They've drawn a line in the sand. They're making the decision like, I'm doing this. I want to go all in on me, which in turn is going to benefit everybody else, and everything else around me will flourish. However, there is always that inevitable craving that comes up when you're putting yourself in a caloric deficit, right? It's going to happen at some point in time. What are some of the things that you do, either like top food choices or strategies or maybe mindset? Like what first comes to mind when you experience those cravings, when you're in that mindset, because I think it's different, but depending on where you're at in your journey. But let's just say you're really tuned in, you're dialed. What's one of the first things that you do when you experience that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and definitely can help some people out there with this. I for the longest time had a just huge list of like alternative sweet recipes and different stuff like that I'd go to, and that's kind of one that I would say like anything that you have that you love to eat, like if it's like Reese's or Reese's peanut butter cups or some sort of candy like gummy bears or whatever, like there's some sort of alternative that you can go to that's going to help you out a little bit. And a lot of times what it is, it's going to help you out with like not having as much sugar or as much calories, right? And a lot of those, like what I would go to is these high protein alternative recipes that are out there. Some of them you got to be careful because they are loaded with some of these like other types of
Yeah.
sweeteners that we've done some podcasts on. There's not, who know, like some of it they do play a little bit of a factor in maybe other things, but as far as what we're talking about here, handling cravings, they can be a very good tool. And so I would challenge anybody out there to, I know you've actually done this too on your Instagram and Facebook, where you've done some of those alternative recipes that you
Yeah.
and Katie will make, right? I
Yep.
think you saw that you did those peanut butter, Reese's peanut butter
Yeah. Yeah.
cups,
Dude,
right?
those are
They're
great.
super good, and you can make them so that they're high protein and lower calories, which is the goal, right? Some of the
Yeah.
things, like if we're kind of wiping that off the slate, one of the big things that came to mind first when you started talking about this was just looking at my protein and my fiber. So for
Mm.
people who are, like you said, dialing it in now, most what comes to mind here for me would be somebody who's in that fat loss phase, and they're like, they're in the trenches, they're dialing in their food quality, and they're it's not maybe 80-20, it's a little bit closer to like 90-10, and they're coming up on a day where they're just having trouble, right? They're deeper in that calorie deficit. It's a little bit harder, maybe at the end of the road where they're not having as much calories. It's like, okay, where are we at protein and fiber wise, right? That's kind of one of the big things there. If you can make sure you're getting, depending on your, how big you are, like 25, 35, 40 grams of fiber a day, and then also making sure that you're right around that 1 gram per pound of body weight on the protein. That helps a lot with the cravings, and makes it so that you can eat more or eat less calories without feeling as hungry.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a huge strategy. That's something that, like you said, I've made those recipes, and I know you used to do Facebook Lives, right? Like you used to
Yeah.
go in, do some cooking, like give people some alternatives. I think checking in with yourself, and the thing that will help, because it's not going to make it completely non-existent, and we'll dive into that in a second too, right? But like embracing that feeling, and knowing and understanding that that is going to be part of it. Like you are going to get cravings when you put yourself in a caloric deficit. It's inevitable, right? It's your body's natural response, which is what we want to do, right? We want to put our body in that state of slightly stressed, right? We have to put ourselves in that position to be able to strip some of this extra adipose and fat tissue off our body, which requires us in some stages to be hungry. What Alex is talking about is great. Is like when you feel those things, the first things you should check in are how much protein have you had so far, and your fiber. Because if you can do those two things and you can have adequate amounts of those, I have my clients personally shoot for, like females, anywhere from 20 to 25 grams a day, guys upwards towards like the 30-gram range on your fiber.
Yeah.
And then protein, we've talked about it before, but a good goal to shoot for is 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of your body weight. If you're 30, 40, 50 plus pounds overweight, then you can go with your goal body weight. But like if you have those things and those targets, and if you're way off those targets from a protein standpoint, just shooting for, get your first 100 grams, right? If you're way far off that, like try to break that 100-gram barrier. And once you do that, you can start continuously and gradually building on top of that. Those are great starting points. But I see people too often like go in to do some crazy diet, slash their calories, eliminate all the stuff that they love, and they're in this panic mode already, right? And they just started. And it's like, okay, like make sure that you have protein and fiber and adequate sources of those, and those cravings will come on less strong. It'll feel like it's like less, a smaller wave, right? They'll still come, but it'll be more of like a ripple effect versus like this huge tidal wave. And then that way it makes it more manageable during your journey. A second thing is we're talking about the people that are, you know, you're pretty deep in, meaning like you're in your journey, you're in this phase. Like you said, we're talking to people that are prioritizing, instead of 80-20, it's more like 90% 10. Like you're really, really trying to dial things in for this temporary phase here. Another thing you could do too is has nothing to do with food, but a lot of times our bodies send conflicting signals of thirst as well. So making sure you're hydrated enough, right?
Yeah.
Like specifically with electrolytes and salt. If you do that, that's also going to help. Again, it's not about completely eliminating things, because there's very few things that'll do that, if any. But it's, can we mitigate the wave and make it more of like just a small ripple in our journey? And if we can, then those little speed bumps are going to be manageable. But trust me, I understand what I'm in like week 10 right now of my in season phase 2 right now. And I experienced those things. And so I'm like speaking this in real time right now. So the things that I do that are almost subconscious that kind of for me fly under the radar just from a lot of repetitions are my protein and fiber. So I have those feelings. They're fewer and far between. But when I do have them, I also let myself have that 10% too, right? Like, so one thing that I'm doing right now is my 10% on the day is pretty much my Ninja Creamy. Dude, I've been falling in love with this thing. Have you had one of these before? Or have you used one?
I've thought about getting them. They look amazing. It's like everything becomes ice cream, right?
Dude, I got it for Christmas from my mom and my sister, and like I didn't use it for months. I was just like, I don't know any recipes. Like, I don't feel like diving into it. And you can scroll social media in seconds and find one that's like high protein, a couple ingredients, stuff you probably already have. And like I threw it together, and dude, it has been phenomenal. So then what I do is like the cravings that I have, that allows me to make it feel like I'm getting my ice cream indulgence. And the whole pint is 245 calories, 35 grams of protein, right? Because that's how I made it. But then like I get creative with my sweet tooth and be like, okay, what do I want for toppings? Because I can mix those in. And I'm only mixing those calories in on top of 245 calories. It's not an 890,000 calorie pint. Right. And so that's where I kind of get like my sweet tooth craving right there, keeping calories low, proteins over 35 grams per pint. Like, it's finding little things like that. To your point, when you first started, there's always going to be some sort of alternative, and you got to get creative. If you're with a coach, ask a coach to have some alternatives there. Another thing that came to mind too is like if you like the gummies and all that, you probably had this brand too, the Smart Sweets or the Sweet Smarts or whatever. Yeah. Like things like that. There's always some sort of alternative. We're not saying like choose that every single time, but if you're going to reach, if you find yourself more times than not, like reaching for the crap, there's going to be some sort of alternative, more calorie friendly alternative, right? Like, so keep that in mind. And I think that's going to help you out big time, man. Is there anything else that you do or that comes to mind or that you've experienced with clients?
Well, I was actually going to bring up. So first off, the Smart Sweets. There's a lot of other brands out there now too, and I think I don't know if it's Skittles or Starburst has like some sort of gummies that are like this. They're even like less, because the Smart Sweets can be really expensive. The
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Skittles or Starburst has like a gummy version of it. Let me see. Let me see what it is here, because
I didn't know they had the Skittles ones.
Oh, it's the Starburst. It's the Starburst.
Starburst. Okay.
Starburst, yeah, it's Starburst goodies, and so those
Got
are
it.
like the and they're a little bit cheaper than the Smart Sweets, if I
Yeah.
remember. And
Yeah.
then also, I used to do what you did with the Ninja Creamy. I used to always make protein ice cream for the longest time, and I would do
Oh,
different
how do you do
versions of
that?
it, like cake batter, chocolate fudge. You can do protein waffles or pancakes, popcorn, cookie dough, like all of
Dude,
these
how'd you
different
do that?
things.
Like how'd you make ice cream without a creamy? Like what'd you do? Did you use the blender? Like how'd you do
Yeah,
it?
just the blender. And here's some of the ingredients for people. So, like, I would do homemade ice cream. So, a third cup of almond milk, 150 grams of frozen berries or just any sort of fruit or whatever, however you want to make it.
Yeah.
150 grams of ice, 1 teaspoon of sweetener of choice, and then a half teaspoon of xanthan gum, and
Yep.
then 1.5 scoops of protein powder. And so, like, you can and you can put other ingredients there too. I would put like like if I wanted to be like chocolate peanut butter, I'd maybe put chocolate protein powder in there with
Yep.
peanut butter, or like you can mix and match. I had like cake batter stuff, and it's like xanthan gum or guar gum are the two ingredients that like
Those
make
give it the texture, right?
yeah, it gives it the
Yeah.
thickness to it.
Yeah.
I had different versions here where I'd put like Greek yogurt in there and like cake batter powder,
Yeah.
all that like different kind of stuff. So like you can put, and I would actually, those sugar free Jello packets.
That's
You
what I
can,
use.
yeah, you can determine what the the flavor is because those are really strong. And my neighbors decided it's a great time to the landscapers are there, so hopefully it's not too loud.
I can't hear you good.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. So so
Uh,
that's kind of some of the big things there. I mean, I have a whole list here of just tons of recipes that I would make, and you can Google these things and find them. But that's a huge thing. And then other than what we've talked about, the only other thing is what you're saying. I mean, it's like just allow yourself to have these things that you really enjoy having in smaller amounts every day, right? If it's just like I've worked with one of my clients. She's in a fat loss phase right now, and it's like she's like, I need like a little bit of like sweetness, and I'm like, all right, let's make sure that we're saving a few hundred calories for the night. Like you can have, or during the day, you can have this something that's going to help handle that sweet tooth, right? And just allow yourself to have it. If you allow yourself to incorporate it in, it becomes a little bit easier, right? And if you can try to control the quantity, some people can't, which is where the alternatives can come into play a little bit more, where you're able to, have more for less. But then also it comes down to stuff like those different pints too. If you don't want to make your own ice cream, they have tons of different brands now where the pint is like 200 to 400 calories, right? And so you could eat the full thing. You could eat half of it. You can find low calorie candy these days, like sugar free stuff, stuff that's going to be half or even a third of the calories than the normal brand stuff is. And those things go a long way. So that's kind of all I got to wrap it up. What do you got? Anything else? Any other tips?
no, that's it, man. But just to kind of recap is checking your protein and fiber, like Alex talked about, making sure you're adequately hydrated because our body does send mixed signals. We can confuse a thirst signal with a hunger craving, right? And so those very often commonly get confused. The one thing that we didn't really go over too that has nothing really to do with eating is in addition to drinking the water, as soon as you get those cravings, is go for a walk, right? Get your mind off of it. Go get
Mhm.
some movement in. You don't necessarily have to go crush a workout, but sometimes just getting your body and changing your physiology and changing your state at that current moment, your body will forget about the hunger signals oftentimes, right? I'm not saying it works every time, but
Yeah.
that's one that I've had my clients do. And they're like, holy cow, that's crazy. Like they're mid walk listening to their podcast and they're thinking nothing to do about food anymore. When before that, 5-10 minutes prior, they had these crazy hunger signals, right? Or what they thought were hunger signals. So I always say that's kind of like my 1-2 step antidote is 8 to 12 ounces of water, preferably mix in some salt, and then go for a walk. After 15-20 minutes, if you're still experiencing those cravings, then maybe you are, right? And then you can go into the strategies that we talked about on this call. But oftentimes you can mitigate that and kind of pivot and deviate from that if you just do that 1-2 step tactic, hydrate and go for a walk, get your mind right, listen to your favorite podcast, enjoy some outdoors if you're in an area that allows you to do that, So that would be my my 1-2 stance there. But also understand that those cravings are completely normal. Like, especially when you're in a deficit, especially when you're in a fat loss phase, you actually want to encourage those cravings, because that means most likely you're probably in a deficit enough to the point where your body can start pulling away and utilizing fat as energy and fuel. So if you're not, and you're never having cravings, then you may not even be in a caloric deficit when you think you are, especially if you're not seeing results, right? So that's always a good sign of, like, when you're constantly getting those craving and hunger signals, like, it often means that you are in a caloric deficit. So those are signs that we do kind of want to embrace when they come along, because they're natural. It's our body's natural tendency. It's not going to be like this perfect linear path of you're never going to have cravings. Like, it happens, and there's ways to work around it. You just got to figure out what works best for you. You got anything else to add, man?
Nothing more, man. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys out there. And if it was, all we ever ask, just make sure you do subscribe, follow us for other podcasts that we release every single week, and then share this with somebody who you think could benefit. Maybe somebody who's in a current calorie deficit or has like goals that they're really striving towards right now and trying to dial things in. This can definitely help them out. But we do appreciate you every single week watching and listening, and we'll be talking to you soon.